Hi everyone, this is Yokesh. Now we are going to see about MVC pattern, which is model view controller pattern. What is MVC pattern? This pattern specifies that an application consists of data model, representation information, and control information. This pattern separates the concern of application into three parts or three components, which is model, view, and controller. And each component is responsible for specific aspect of application's functionality. The separation of the component makes the application easier to maintain. If any changes in one component do not require the changes in the other component. Now let's see the component of MVT pattern. The first one is model. This represents the data and business logic. It is responsible for managing the application data, processing the business rules, and responding to the request for information from the component such as view and controller. The second component is view. It represents the presentation layer of an application. It is used to visualize the data that the model contains. And the third one is controller. It works on both the model and view. It is used to manage the application's flow, that is data flow in the model. It also updates the view whenever the data is changed. Now let's see the structure. Here, the browser is the client. The browser sends a request to the controller for a page. The controller calls the model and the model gathers the requested data and sends it to the controller. Here, the controller deliver the data into view. Here the view sends the data to the browser. Here there is no direct communication between the model and view. The communication done only by the model and controller to view. Then the communication between the components. The below communication flow ensures that each component is responsible for a specific aspect of application's functionality. Let's see one by one. The first one is user interaction with view. Here, the user interact with the view is clicking a button or entering a text into a form. The second is view receives user input. Here, the view layer receives the user input and forward it to the controller. Then the third one is controller processes user input. The control receives the user input from the view. It interrupts the input, performs if any necessary operation should be done, and it also decides how to respond. And the fourth is controller update model. This is based on the user input or application logic. The fourth is model notifies views of change. If the model changes, it notifies the view. View requests data from the model. The view requests data from the model is to update its display. And controller update view. Here the controller update view is based on the changes in the model or in response to the user input. View renders updated UI. It is based on the changes made by the controller. Now let's see the advantages of MVC model. Separation of concern, modularity, flexibility, parallel development, code reusability are the advantages of the MVC pattern. First, separation of the concerns. MVC separates different aspects of application, that is data, UI, and logic. It is useful and it is very easy to understand, maintain, and modify. Due to the separation, we can easily modify each component. There will be no uh, there will be no difficulty in modifying. The second one is modularity. Here, the component is separated individually. So we can develop each component and we can also test each component. First, we can develop model and we can also separately test the model. Then we can develop view and we can also separately test the view. Same for the controller. It promotes code reusability and scalability. Scalability is nothing but MVC allows for the modular development of application, making it easier to scale the application growth. Then the flexibility. Since the components are independent, changes in one component do not affect the other, allowing easier updates and modification. That what the flexibility. Parallel development. Multiple developers can work on different components simultaneously, which speed up the development process. Code reusability. Here, the components can be reused in other parts of application or in different projects, reducing development time and effort. And disadvantage of MVC pattern. Complexity, learning curve, overhead, potential for over-engineering, increased file count are the disadvantage of MVC pattern. First, we'll see complexity. Implementing the MVC pattern can add complexity to the code, especially for simple application, leading to overhead in development, which is for simpler application, we have to put more effort. That what the complexity. Learning curve. First, the developer should understand the concept of MVC and they should know how to implement it effectively. This may take time, additional time, and the resources. Then, overhead. The communication between the components can lead to overhead, affecting the performance of application, especially resource constrained environment. Overhead is we have to put more effort. That what the overhead. Then potential for over-engineering. In some cases, the developer may over-engineer the application, which is adding unnecessary abstractions and layers, which lead to bloat and hard to maintain code. Increased file count. MVC can result in large number of files and classes compared to simpler architecture, which may make the project structured more complex and harder to navigate. Now let's see the example of MVC design pattern. Here, this class student is the model, the class student view is the view, and the student controller class is the controller. First, the student class, which is model view, which represents the data, which is student's name and roll number, and provides method to access and modify this data. Class student. Here we can enter the roll number and name into the student's class. If there is any change or we can use set roll number and set name if there is any modification. If we have to access, then we can use it by get name and get roll number. Then the second one is view, student view class, which represents how the data should be displayed to the user. It contains a method print student detail to print the student's name and roll number. Here in the class student view, we can view the students by giving the method called print students detail. System.out.println is to print the details, the name of the student and the roll number. The last but not the least, the controller class, which is student controller class. It acts as intermediary between the model and view. Here, it contains reference to the model and view object, provides method to update the model. For example, set student name, set student roll number. Here, we can update the model using the method set student name and set roll number. And we can update the view if there is any changes, then we can use the method called update view. See at the last, we can see it update view. View dot print student details model dot get name and model dot get roll number. We can update and we can get it by we can see it by giving the get name and get roll number. And the method student name and student set student roll number is to modify the student's detail, which is their name and their roll number. This what the MVC pattern is. Here we can where the MVC pattern can be applicable is when MVC pattern is suitable for application with complex user interface, which is complex UI, or those requires frequent updates and modification. Here, it is used commonly in web development framework, like example for Ruby. Example. Thank you.